Al principio ni siquiera tuve fuerzas para reaccionar. Había estado 3 semanas en coma.
Tuviste mucha suerte. Podías haber muerto, como Nuria.
¿Y qué? Habría sido mejor. Además, usted vio su cadáver. A mí nadie me lo enseñó.
¿Crees que no murió?
Yo soy como usted. Solo creo en lo que veo.
Millán Astray. Este es el templo de la inteligencia. ¡Mi templo! Vencer no es convencer. Conquistar no es convertir. Venceréis porque tenéis fuerza bruta de sobra, pero no convenceréis porque para convencer hay que persuadir. Venceréis, pero no convenceréis. He dicho. ¡Rojo! ¡Ay, no! ¡Hijo de puta!
¿Qué es lo que quieres ver?
¿Qué es lo que tienes?
Tengo porno de todas las categorías. Porno light, gore, shadow, oriental. Eso es cojonudo.
La verdad es que el porno no me interesa demasiado. Es fácil de conseguir. Si eso es todo lo que tienes.
Así que la nena quiere marcha, ¿eh? Muy bien.
Necesito imágenes esencialmente violentas, ya te lo he dicho.
Esencialmente violentas. Qué bonito. Te vas a cagar.
¿Qué vas a poner?
Fresh Blood. Sangre fresca. Una película muy bonita y educativa.
I'll wake them. You wait here. Whatever you do, don't open the curtains. Wakey, wakey. Now, come on. Eyes closed, hands together.
Let it be a light of day, Jesus, to whom now I may pray. Let it be the Virgin pure, whom I greet with face so sure. Jesus, Mary, spotless rose, keep us till this day doth close.
They're still half asleep.
What sweet little children.
I'll kill you too.
Ladies and gentlemen, señoras y señores, please welcome Alejandro Amenabar. So thank you for being here and for this masterclass. More rather than discussion, I think. We'll be, of course, discussing about your films. Your vision of cinema, your past, your present, and maybe your future. And there will be, of course, some questions from the audience. And we may show some clips, from your films. I picked clips from the others and from the scene side. You will recognize them, I think. And let's start with something very basic. Can you remember your first image of cinema, your first image of a film, something that, moved you, shocked you, and maybe, shaped you as a filmmaker, as an artist?
Yes, good afternoon. Of course, I remember one of my first experiences in a theater. It was that I was expelled. I was thrown away because I was crying, and actually I wasn't crying. I was starting to talk, and at some point someone got me out of the theater. And the first image that it was a Western, actually, which is a genre that I ended up not liking much. And the first image that I remember going to see Snow White, and the face of the witch when the queen, her face becomes the witch's face. That was really scared me. That really scared me. And of course, a bit afterwards, I watched Jaws, and I was a very easily scared boy. I was scared literally of anything or anyone. And with that movie, I was away from water for years. I think I learned to swim when I was 10 or 11. So yeah, those images had a very big impact on me.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I read that after that you discovered many films not on TV because you were not allowed to watch TV at home. Your parents were very strict, a bit like in the others. And you watched a lot of films on VHS at your neighbor's apartment. Can you remember? Can you tell us about?
Yeah, it's true that particularly I think it was my mother. She was a bit like the mother in the others, because she, she's not a religious woman, and she didn't keep us in shadows, but she didn't want us to be watching TV all the time. She encouraged us to read, basically. But what happened was that when I was 11, 12, apart from those little few moments when I went to the movies, to the theaters, my neighbors, who were a couple from the United States, they had VHS, VHS, and they had all the movies that I could have had. I really owe to them a lot because they started to play the movies for me. They were in English, so I remember they did literally simultaneous translation. And then I watched Alien, for instance.
The first one?
I was one of the first one, and The Changeling. The thing is, I was very easily scared, but I couldn't help watching horror movies. I loved it. And so I started to go every week to their house to see a movie, and all the movies that I couldn't see in theaters, I watched them in other house, other place.
So you watch mostly American films?
Yeah, they were really American, and all the stuff they had mainly was Hollywood pictures. Yeah. Then I realized at some point in my life that some of the movies that I really liked, Hitchcock, Kubrick, Spielberg, they were made by the same guys. So I started to compulsively. Then I started to go to the theaters. I remember with my brother, and once I started to earn some money, because my parents lived in the outskirts. They live in a small town where there was no theater. Then we started to go to Madrid to go to the theaters, and I started to analyze all those movies I already could watch in my home. And at some point, I decided I want to be one of them, to aspire to be a filmmaker.
And you bought a camera very early.
Yes, I was at college, and a friend said to me that there was some studies specifically for movies. That was imagen y sonido, that is called in Spain. It's like something like communication.
Yeah.
And so I went to the university, and the very first year, I already wanted to make a short film. The thing is that I hadn't even realized that in order to shoot something, you should have a script. And I'm amazed how bold I was that we started shooting that short movie without a script.
But this course, I mean, this university was not a proper film school. I mean, so you discovered the filmmaking when you made your own short films, right?
Yes, I mean, it's a proper degree, but it's really theoretical and based in, I mean, we started study again history and sociology, and I mean, really it wasn't preparing you to be a filmmaker. And but that's all I want. Actually, I became a very bad student when I went into the university. So all the things I have to learn them by doing them. And the very first thing that I understood when we had all the stuff, all the material of this first short film called La Cabeza, it was a horror short film, of course, was that it was a disaster. So the gap between the dream you have in your mind and when what you end up doing, that's the best way to learn all of a sudden. Because me and my friend who had made it, we did the short between three people. Our classmate she was the lead, the actress, and I was the actor, and then there was another guy. So we were three of them. And that moment we understood that what we had wasn't good enough at all. And then what I did is what we would call nowadays, I didn't even know at that time, reshooting. So I went back to my house and I changed the ending and everything. I mean, I tried to make a laugh about what we had done before, and that's when the short got some interest after that reshoot.
We have film students like in the audience. Would you tell them to?
You have them at back.
Yeah. Would you tell them now? I mean, to skip studies and go straight to filmmaking?
No, I think. Actually, one of my friends there now is the guy running that degree at the university, and had some conversations with him. Very, very interesting. I think university is important. I mean, of course, there are schools of cinema and schools where they really prepare you to know where you should put the camera, how could you work with actors, with actresses. But the good thing about those studies is that, first of all, you can meet a lot of people who want to do the same as you at the cafeteria. So we spend a lot of time there. They're quite easy to you could get the degree. The thing is that I would get so lazy that I couldn't even get the degree. But it's interesting. They form you, or tend to form you, as an intellectual human being. And the part of, let's say, the technical part or even the artistic part, I do feel, in my case, it was self-taught. And I learned the very first day of shooting, when I shot my first long feature film thesis, the very first day I learned more than all those 5 years at the university. But I learned it in just one day. I just needed to know which type of lenses you have. And I was going to see everything through a monitor. And I learned that day also that making movies take time, that time plays against you. So the more time you save, not only the more money you save, but you make sure that you have what you you really need to get. So all those things, honestly, I don't think you should learn any at the university. But it's good to be there. And as I said, even just for the fact that we were together, all the people I was surrounded by, there are now are filmmakers or somehow work at the movies. I remember another thing that a teacher said to us the first day of class. He said, "How many?" We were 300 in the class. Some of us had to be that day at the hallway because we couldn't be at the same class. And the teacher said, "Don't worry. After a few days, there will be very blank spaces." And he said, "How many of you want to be a filmmaker?" And almost virtually everything raised their hands. And he said, "Well, here there will be about 1 or 2 will be filmmakers. The rest will work for the audiovisual." And that makes sense because making a movie is something collective. So I remember in those times during those years, and I was doing my short films and working for another short films, I tried different tasks in the process. So that's another thing that I recommend for people who are starting. Don't be obsessed with being a filmmaker. Try editing. Try, why not, production. Or in my case, try music. Try writing. And sometimes you can end up doing a movie. Why not?
Yeah, this is something that which is not stressed too much. You also compose. I mean, you compose like the music of many of your films. I mean, how did it happen to you, like doing music?
And well, Jaws, the movie I was talking about, had a very impressive music. And a couple of years later, I watched at the theater another movie, fortunately, that really, really shocked me, which was Superman, the 78 movie, old movie. And the music is by John Williams, yeah. So I got obsessed. I'm one of those freaks who has been keeping for years collecting soundtracks, and I just love John Williams. And John Williams led me to Jerry Goldsmith, and he to Bernard Herrmann, and Alex North, and listening to all the classical ones, mainly the classicals when I was a youngster. That helped me. I mean, that allowed me to have music in my life all the time. In my daily life, I just keep listening to soundtracks, and if I'm not listening to, I keep humming things in my head. So it's like my whole life works with the music in the backdrop. And when I did my first short, that one without a script, a friend of mine, someone who was a student in the class, he was a musician himself, and said, "Why don't we try to do the music for it?" And I said, "Oh, that's okay." So he did the main title, and it sounded great. But when he was going to put the music on the scary moments, it didn't work. It was just too musical. So I decided to try, because in the meantime, all those years, I had been playing guitar, playing the keyboards. I'm not a trained musician myself, but I love to play tunes, and so I tried, and I saw that it wasn't that bad, that it worked. I mean, the music, I'm sure it was terrible, but it worked, and that horror piece, and so I kept doing it in all my shorts. And when I did my first long feature, my producer said to me, "Why don't you try to do the music?" I would have chosen a composer in those times that I really like in Spain, José Nieto. Now it's almost forgotten. And of course, my producer wanted to save money. So he said, "Why don't you try to do it yourself?" And I did. And that was it. Then it's became part of the process. Now, there are a few films I haven't done the music for, but I feel, for instance, with this one that I composed the music during the summer, it's been one of the most rewarding work experiences ever for me, because I felt I was connected to the movie somehow, and I think it allows me to get exactly what I need in that moment with that actress, with the actor. I really express myself through music too.
Do you remember the last film? I mean, in which you like found a good use of music? A film by another.
Sorry?
A film by another filmmaker, like in which the music, I mean, that you liked or you find it interesting.
Okay. But you mean the music made by the same filmmaker?
Oh, no, music made in another film by another filmmaker recently.
I have to say, John Williams is my favorite. I cannot help it. I could be listening for him for years. And the interesting thing is that when I try, you know that sometimes when you work on the editing of the movie, you have temp music.
Yeah.
So you put on some music from previously works, other movies, and that's the way you show it to the producers. Because it's very hard to watch a movie which is supposed to have music without anything at all. Now I do it. My last picture, for instance, I showed to my producer with no music at all, and then I did the music. But sometimes you put on some music, and the thing is that when I try to put some John Williams music in my movies, it doesn't work at all. So I end up putting Ennio Morricone, which is not bad.
So you're not into Hans Zimmer, for example?
Hans Zimmer is a great composer, and I would say is the John Williams of nowadays. It's like, for me, there was a documentary about John Williams like a few months ago, and it was interesting to listen to him talking about new tendencies, because he seems to be a very gentleman and very polite, but the way he was expressing, he was saying it's a pity that there's no melody anymore. And I think there's a current. Me, as a listener of soundtracks, there's a current that started in many, many films where you use the music as part of the sound design, and it's impressive. And for that, Hans Zimmer is a master, and the works he has done for Christopher Nolan's music is amazing. But for me, I have to say, it's a bit sad when I always say it about rewarding, being with the orchestra, doing a symphonic work, playing the music for the movie is amazing. I would like to think that I will be one of those last guys who still uses classical music in a good way, you know, for images. In my last picture, for instance, I tried. I said, because my producer encouraged me to do it, why don't you try something that is more ambiental, more ambience music, and you have a pad, like a pulse, with no melody. I tried for a day and ended up doing melody, which is what I love.
I read that when you wrote the script of Thesis, you were listening to the score of Psycho?
I'm sure. Psycho, and there's a movie that I love called The Changeling.
Yeah.
And I love the music for that one. Yeah, and I think in Thesis you have things from Dress to Kill, which was Brian De Palma's movies, and the music
Pino
was...
Donaggio.
Sorry?
Pino Donaggio.
Pino Donaggio, and he was doing something Hitchcockian for sure. Yeah. There's also one more thing about music. For me, what is great about movies is that for me it's like the opera of new times, you know. And I see it, and I watch them and I conceive them in an operistic way. That's why for me it's very difficult to watch movies. Sometimes they're incredible movies without music, and also the music dates the movies. Is one of the things that makes the movie feel older. But I cannot help that the great thing about movies is that you have all these arts together, and I want to be the music really part of it. I really feel it that way.
Let's go back a little bit to your first two films, Thesis and Abriosaurus. What struck me, I think, at the time and still now, and I think it's a compliment, they don't feel Spanish. They didn't feel Spanish at the time. I mean, Thesis is this thriller about snuff movies, and Abriosaurus is this high-concept mix, you know, of like thriller, like melodrama and sci-fi. And they're very I would say, straightforward in a good sense. I mean, there's no irony, there's no, there's no postmodernism, there's no campiness. I mean, it's not like the Iglesia, for example. And do you remember, your state of mind at the time and why you wanted to make those films that way and to scare people, to shock people?
Well, let's say that they took the genre seriously.
Yeah.
You know that sometimes in Spain, people approach me and say, I love your movies, they don't look Spanish. And for me, it's a bit like, well, they are Spanish. That's the thing. Well, yeah, what happened maybe with Tesis, and not only Tesis, there were a few films in those times by Alex de la Iglesia, who introduced science fiction in Spanish movies. There was a new generation, and I was coming from the university, and I was obsessed with all those iconic films that I had watched in the house of my neighbors, and I wanted to explore that, and I wanted for the audience to feel the kind of things that I felt watching those films. And at the same time, I didn't want to renounce to my own country. Actually, I was born in Chile, but I was raised in Madrid. I wanted to reflect that, and the building where Tesis, my first film, takes place is a real university. I still wonder why they let us the building to shoot at it, and so I wanted to explore all those feelings that were coming from the movies, American movies that I have seen. By the time, I think I had seen more American movies than Spanish movies, and intermingle them within a Spanish environment. Actually, the character of Chema, who is a co-protagonist in that movie, was one of my student friends. And I said one day to him, I'm going to put you in my movie. So I was playing with the Spanish characters, but kind of things that had to do with genre. And it's true that I took it seriously. And fortunately, at some point, people started to connect with that. Because I have to say, when we presented Tesis, my first film, well, it was well received. We presented it in Berlin, actually in Berlin Film Festival. But the box office was kind of normal. And then it won the Goyas, and then it became an iconic movie in Spain.
Yesterday, to introduce you, I nicknamed you as the secret child, the secret Spanish child of Hitchcock. And I think it was a way, to, how can I say, to tell that, you're not afraid, to entertain, to please the audience, but at the same time, you can go into darker themes, darker places. Tesis, it's about, violence on screen and how we position to violence on screen. Maybe Abriosorts is a bit about narcissism, toxic men and everything. Can you tell us about that, maybe?
It's true that I try to connect with the audience. As I was telling you, I wanted really for the audience, to have the same pleasure that I had watching movies, many times horror movies. And yeah, about the complexity, I also think I tended to think of this work, of these arts, of this business as something that had to do with the market. I remember when I was in the university, I just kept saying, I just want to work at this, and I'm not sure in which kind of format, but I want to be part of it. I saw it as a way of really getting to earn my money, my salary. But at some point, and now I think it was from the very beginning, I realized that there was a way to express myself. And in the case of Tesis, it really has to do with the feeling that I had when I was a student, with the media focused on some horrible crimes that were taken in Spain. And there was a whole current in the media like going too far. And so there is a criticism in the movie about that kind of behavior in journalism. Of course, it's not the whole thing, because I want the package. I want to connect with the audience. I need the surprises. I need the scares. But at the same time, there was a moral focus in the movie. And in the case of Open Your Eyes, I really feel that we did that movie too fast.
Yeah.
You know, if we finish thesis, and then my producers encouraged me to do right away a movie. We had to get out with something. And I remember with Mateo, even we started shooting without a script, like in my short film. And the scene, one of the first scenes when the protagonist goes to Gran Via, which is the main street in Madrid, and it's totally empty. We did it 1 year before we started the script. I mean, I felt we were rushing. And some of that rush, and we just have to play with things that we felt, things that had happened to us. I'm talking about Mateo Gil, my co-writer, and I. And we still had the sensibility of a teenage somehow. We were 20, 23, 24. And so I feel there's that kind of adolescent vision in the movie. Then the third one, The Others, connected me with all my primary fears. I did it as an act really of having fun and writing something. I said, I would love to have a bunch of characters in a house and throw away the key and have it in complete darkness and see what happens and explore it almost in a theatrical way. And from then on, Mar Adentro, which has to do with euthanasia, yeah. Agora, which is my feelings of change in the cycle of history that I think is already happening. All my movies have something more profound or even moral that leads them.
Speaking about The Others, can we watch the clips of The Others that we prepared, please?
take the dress off now. Anne, are you listening to me? Anne? What did I tell you about sitting on the floor? It's clean. It makes no difference. Why can't you ever do as you're told? What's the matter? Where is my daughter? What have you done with my daughter?
You mad? I am your daughter.
You're not my daughter! No! No! You're not my daughter! No! No! Mom, I heard shots.
She wants to kill me. She won't stop until she kills us. She won't stop. She won't stop until she kills us. You're wicked. You're wicked, wicked.
I think those scenes are a pretty good sum up of what we discussed before, the use of music. I mean, your Hitchcockian influences and everything. And I thought it was interesting. I mean, to see two scenes, like a way how to scare people by daylight in the first scene and how to scare people in the dark in the second scene. Do you have any special recollection from those scenes? I mean, the way you prepared them, or any special memories, anecdotes?
Well, I remember the song that Nicole Kidman had a lot of great ideas in this movie, and there was a real collaboration between she and I. And she suggested the day we were going to shoot, she was supposed to be just lying next to him, and he doesn't react. And she said, why don't I sing something for him? And so she offered to sing that song. And I remember we had to get the rights that very day for her to sing it. And then I also remember the scene when she grabs the girl and fights with her. Most of the shots there, when you don't see actually her face, that's not Nicole. Because Nicole had a problem with her knee. She had been shooting Moulin Rouge and had an accident in her knee. So in the movie, when she finally came to Madrid to shoot the others, we realized that she couldn't really run, or could have problems running up and down the stairs. And I remember that scene. We did many stuff with Vieta. I remember a double. Who did a great job in everything that had to do with the action. Of course, there were some times where we needed to see Nicole's face, but every time we could, we put the camera behind.
I think it was one of the first films, when Nicole Kidman started to become a serious actress. I mean, now she's a superstar and she has many Oscars and everything. I mean, many awards, but at the time it was not obvious that she could,
Well, she just had recently made Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah.
And she had made To Die For. So those were movies where you could see that she was a great actress. Maybe I wasn't so aware of how great she was. Of course, I had seen, I saw Eyes Wide Shut by the time, but by the time we had them in this project, she wasn't. No, she didn't have that level of quality that she has nowadays. Then she did this movie, and she did The Hours. Of course, she did Dogville, which are movies that show how incredibly talented she is.
it was your first, like, I mean, there was the remake of Abriosaurus before. It was your first contact with Hollywood. You had to deal with Nicole Kidman. You had to deal with Tom Cruise. You had to deal at the time with Dimension Films, so the Weinstein brothers. Do you remember?
Harvey. We had to deal with Harvey.
And it was like a very specific time, you know, like about, you know, like the golden age of indie cinema, like in the US. I mean, do you remember, I mean, how, and you were quite young at the time. So, I mean, do you remember how you dealt with that, and would you do that again?
Yeah, I was young. Somehow it was an experience. I did my first movie when I was 23. Then I did Abre los Ojos. I must have been 26, and then I was 28, and I was doing this project, and I really didn't have the experience of working, first of all, in English, which seems, I know that in this country you're used to work many languages, but in my case, I'm very lazy with languages, and English is the only other language that I can speak a bit. And in that moment when we did the others, I didn't speak really English. So I said to my producers, who encouraged me to do that project in English, because the story was going to take place in Chile, and they said this has to do more with the Anglo-Saxon reality atmosphere. We have to put this to place this story in UK. And I said, well, first of all, I should start learning English. So that was the first barrier. And I remember when we had the very first days of rehearsals, that Nicole herself said, look, we should have to in order to make sure that we understand each other, we should have a translator. And we have a translator. The very first day of shooting, we had a translator. So one was the language barrier. The other one was that I was going to work with a star, because by that time Nicole was a star already, married to no less than Tom Cruise. And by the time I didn't even realize what the Weinstein brothers meant, but they were big names in Hollywood, and considered very tough in order to work with filmmakers. And I remember trying to see myself like detached of all of it. And of course, and the other challenge was working with children, and again, in a language that wasn't my language. So there were a few tasks there, a few goals, and I tried to, as I said, to see myself detached from it, and trying to stay calm. And at some points, you really need to get into the mat and then get into some of the battles. Sometimes they're little battles, sometimes they're big battles. But I have to say, I always counted with the support of Nicole. Sometimes it was difficult for all of us. She was coming to a country she didn't know anything about. She was living there because I insisted on shooting the movie in Spain. And they went there. Tom Cruise went there as well, and I'm sure it was difficult for them. Then when we were in post-production, it was the end of their marriage, and I'm sure it was again difficult for them. But they really worked hard on the movie. On the other hand, Tom knows a lot about filmmaking. He's a freak, well, like me, I guess. Knows about editing, about DP, cinematography, everything. And so there was an influence. There were discussions, and sometimes we had battles. I'm not saying with Tom specifically, but with Miramax, with Dimension, who distributed the film in America and in English territories. And yeah, I have to say, I managed to keep Final Cut in all my movies. But sometimes, even if you have Final Cut, you know you're going to suffer battles. And so yeah, I have to fight for this movie. Maybe it's been the process more in terms of movie making. It has been the most intense process in my life. I have to learn how to treat a proper actress as well. I didn't know anything about directing actors or actresses. It's incredible, but it was my third movie, and I still thought that I could really just do things for them. I mean, I didn't know how to connect with someone who's performing and how to help her. And that movie, I had to learn it fast.
What kind of advice would you give to a young filmmaker who would have to deal with Hollywood? Sorry? What kind of advice would you give to a filmmaker who...
Well, it's difficult because now you have to deal with platforms, which is more or less like Hollywood. So it depends on what you want. If you want the Hollywood journey, if you want the Hollywood dream, well, go there and embrace the system. What they say, embrace the system, and you might live in a great house, and if it's not burned, by the way, it's very sad what's happening in LA. But if that's your goal, as it was when I started at university, getting paid, getting my salary, it's good. If you want something else regarding your career, from an artistic point of view, you could get it in Hollywood. And people like Christopher Nolan are doing exactly what they want. And they embrace the system, and they're playing with it, and now they have the power to do whatever they want. But that happens that's so rare nowadays. Movies, unfortunately, cost a lot of money, and you're going to have a bunch of people who are making sure that the movie goes in the right direction. Maybe sometimes the right direction is totally the opposite direction to what you want. So it depends. In my case, when I was actually after this movie and the next one, no, it was after this one, where I could have chosen jump into the American system. And I decided I wanted my career only be led by the stories I wanted to tell. And as long as I can get financed, I don't care if it's here in Hollywood or in China. But I would try to stay faithful to my story, not just going there because of it.
And then after the others, you made Mar Adentro. Why do you want, to tell that story, to go to something more grounded than your previous films?
I remember someone, when I was in a Q&A in Los Angeles, when I presented Mar Adentro for the Oscars, because it was nominated for International Picture. Yeah. And I remember someone said to me, why, when you are having this career, why are you going backwards doing this movie, which is going back to your reality, to Spain? And I said, I would like to think that my career is going onwards, not backwards. But for me, it was really a jump. Because it was until then I had been doing my short films. My movies had to do with mystery, suspense, even horror, and all of a sudden I totally put aside Hitchcock and tried to explore something different. And it was what the story demanded, because it was a real story. I was really engaged with the guy wrote with his. It was a paraplegic guy, and he wrote with his mouth a book of poems, and I totally engaged with that book and understood his situation, and at some point wanted to tell his story. And of course, I couldn't. It could be a horror story, but it wouldn't have been honest. I needed to treat the subject in the best possible way. And for me, maybe it's been one of the most rewarding experiences shooting that movie, because we had the money, we had an incredible cast. We have Javier Bardem, who accepted to play the role. We had incredible makeup. We had all the time we needed. And we were telling, for me, an important story. Mar Adentro is a story about love, about death, basically, and about life, and about love. I would put it in that order. And it was very emotional for all of us involved in that shooting. And I remember with a lot of, it's a great experience.
So let's watch 2 clips from Mar Adentro, please.
¿Realmente hueles el mar desde aquí?
Sí, a veces por la mañana sí hay brisa. Y está la ventana abierta, lo cual como si estuviera dentro.
Sí que tienes buen olfato.
Sí, eso es probablemente lo que me provoca las intensas. Las fantasías. Horror, por ejemplo.
¿Y el olor?
Es lo primero que me imagino cuando tengo una buena asociación contigo.
Vaya. ¿Y de qué van esas inspiraciones?
Muchas cosas. Solo tienen algo en común. Todas puedo comprar. Entonces, me levanto y viajo hacia donde imagino que estarás en ese momento. Y si me imagino que estás aquí, por ejemplo, pues simplemente me acerco hacia ti y hago lo que tantas veces deseo poder hacerte. Entonces, tu dolor se vuelve más fuerte. Me mareo. Que siento de tus palpitaciones. Después siento tus manos. Y ahí se me va la cabeza. Ahí se me va la cabeza.
Bueno, ya sabía yo que te ibas a tomar algo así. Eso es lo que hacen todos los hombres. Reírse de mí. Tú ni vas a ser menos.
Rosa, perdóname. No. Es que últimamente me está pasando un poco de todo, ¿sabes? Y bueno, estoy un poco abrumado.
¿Por qué? ¿No se puede enamorar a nadie de un tetrapléjico o qué? ¿Tan raro te parece?
Bueno, quizá deberíamos escalar algunas cosas, ¿no? Sobre todo si estamos hablando de algo tan complejo como es el amor.
Complejo.
Sí, complejo, Rosa. Por mucho que tú me digas ahora que me amas, pues yo no puedo estar seguro de cuánto de real hay en tu amor o cuánto de idealización de un hombre que quisiste encontrar y no pudiste, o no duró.
Pero ¿qué premio me estás soltando, Ramón? A mí no me líes. O se ama o no se ama. El amor no se puede razonar.
Bueno, y si eso es así, a ver, ¿qué quieres que haga? ¿Me quiero vivir contigo?
A mí me basta con saber que puedes ir a verte de vez en cuando.
Pues claro que puedes, mujer. Claro que puedes.
Sí, pero ¿por cuánto tiempo?
Pero Rosa, no me irás a pedir ahora que siga viviendo por ti, ¿no?
¿Y si te dijera que tú me das fuerzas para vivir, ¿no?
A ver, para ese momento. Para. Siéntate ahí. Vamos a ver. ¿Tú quieres a tus hijos?
Claro, ¿cómo no lo voy a querer?
Bueno, pues ahí tienes la fuerza para vivir. No me pegues con esa responsabilidad, Rosa. ¿A eso le llamas amar? A retenerme contra mi voluntad. Mira, la persona que de verdad me ama es precisamente la que me ayudó a morir. Eso es amar, Rosa. Eso es amar.
Chose those scenes because even if the the character of Ramon Javier Bardem cannot move, like under the neck, he's still fucking sexy. I mean, all the women love him. He's like James Stewart in Rear Window. I mean, he doesn't move, but everybody falls for him?
I mean, the thing is that I remember when my producer, Fernando, I've been working with Fernando for more than 30 years now, he suggested Javier to play the role. I said, I mean, we have this guy, Javier was much younger than the guy he performs, and he's not even bald. And why are we casting someone who has nothing to do with the main character? And Fernando said, who do you think is the best actor in Spain? And I said, Javier Bardem. Okay, that's the answer. And yeah, he's very Javier is very sexy. But the truth is that the real character, Ramon San Pedro, indeed was very sexy, and he liked to play seduction with anyone who came into his room, including women, and women fell in love with him. And that's something he played with, because as you know in the movie, he wanted to die. And he kept saying that, the person who really loves me is the person who helped me dying.
There's an interesting tension in all your films. I mean, most of the men are lost or powerless, and the women, I mean, they take the lead. I mean, they're very independent. I was struck by the end of Mientras dure la guerra. At the end, the main character is saved by the wife of Franco, when she took his hand. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's true that I usually have strong women around me. My mom is one of the strongest women. I mean, she is by far the most stubborn person I've ever known. And she's great, by the way. But she's very stubborn and very, very strong. She is 93 years old now. And she kept, I shot my last picture, that one I'm going to release this year. I shot it in Alicante, where she lives. And she kept coming every day to the set. Claudio, who's here, who's at the set, knows. She kept staring she knew the names of all the crew people. And she's great. But then I have my lawyer, who is her daughter-in-law, and she is very strong as well. And usually I have strong women around me, and I like strong women in the movies. That's true.
70% of the film happens in a room, I think. How, in terms of like cinematic language, I mean, how did you resolve that? I mean, how did you keep the film moving?
Well, that was the main goal when we were writing the script, because we had the story of a guy who was very reluctant to move from his bed, and I didn't want the movie to feel like a stage play. And so we desperately thought of ways to make the people, because we had, at the same time, we knew that we had to stay with the main character, but the main character refused to move from his bed, so what are we going to do? And we literally, at some point, I think I dreamt it. I know this because a friend was telling me a few days ago. He said, I told him my dream when I was writing, and I dreamt that I jumped from the window and started flying, which is a way like escaping, running away from your reality. So we literally looked for any excuse to abandon that room. And also we moved all the people who surrounded Ramon, the two women who were in love with him, the woman who took care of him, his nephew, his brother. We focused on their lives, and that was also a way, and on their feelings, and that was a way to somehow escape from the room. I don't know how the percentage of the movie in the room, but I'm very proud of that you don't feel that is a stage play.
This year was the 20th anniversary of the film, and there was this gathering celebration during the Goya, and it was like also to remind us that you made a film about euthanasia 20 years before Pedro Almodovar's The Room Next Door. How did you feel about that gathering celebration, having all the cast on stage and everything?
Well, it's great for us. It was great for us. As I told you, we had such a great experience making that movie. It was like a communion somehow. I don't believe in those things, but I remember being in Galicia where the story took place and shooting the exteriors. And I remember myself something as crazy as talking to Ramon before we started shooting the day before. I was in front of the sea. I was talking to him. So it was very, very intense for all of us. And the other day we were there at the ceremony having fun behind the curtains. And and also I have to say, when I did the movie, I didn't want the movie to be very focused on the legal issues, because I understood, or I felt that legally at some point we would get to what Ramon is saying, which is for me quite reasonable. He's saying, I'm the owner of my own life, of my own body. Forget about religion, forget about God. This has nothing to do with what you believe. This is the fact. I need the freedom for my body. And so I try not to focus so much on the legal issues, but the truth is that, quite long afterwards, the law was approved in Spain. So I'm glad to think that now all the suffering and all the battle of Ramon in those times wouldn't be necessary.
After Mar Adentro, you made Agora, you made Mientras dure la guerra, which are like, we discussed that during lunch today, which are mostly like intellectual discussions about, like the meaning of, like what we do, what we are the center of the universe and everything. So you move to like more serious subject. But do you still feel the same director?
Yeah, I've always been the same, but I evolve, of course, as any human being, as any citizen, as anyone who thinks or who researches. And Agora, I would dare to say, is my most ambitious film, not only because it was the most expensive, but it's the most ambitious in terms of the most profound, the profoundest. I really wanted to talk about how I see ourselves, literally, in a physical way, in a sociological way. And also, I had the feeling then already that the world was changing, and not necessarily for worse. For better. I'm quite an optimistic person. I'm one of those directors who get to in the set and not are like stressed. We don't have time. I just try to see things in the sunny side. But I do feel that we are already in a worse situation, in the worst possible scenario. And I'm talking, obviously, after the election of President Trump in the United States. And I had that feeling already when I was doing Agora, and the assault to the library. Reminded me so much when I saw the assault to the Capitol 4 years ago to what the images were reproducing in the movie. It's like a whole mess taking over what is the icon of democracy. In that case, it was the icon of knowledge. So yeah, all those things interest me, and I knew when we wrote it again, Mateo and I, that movie, we wanted to grasp many elements. We wanted to talk about astronomy, we wanted to talk about religion, we wanted to talk about society then, and of course we wanted to talk about the change in the cycle of history that I feel we are involved in. So that's why I'm very proud of that movie, that at least when you see it, I hope people can understand it, because I saw it a few years ago, and I was trying to follow the astronomical part, and I had trouble myself to understand it.
Would you agree that all your films may be different, but they are mostly about characters? We have a certain vision of the world, and then they open their eyes, and they discover that the world is more complicated than that? Yeah,
discovery is a whole thing for anyone, opening up your mind. The movie I'm working on right now, which is about Cervantes, who was our most famous writer in Spain, and he was kept held by Arab corsairs and taken to Algiers, and he had to open his eyes and get to know the culture of the enemy. It was in that time, those times it was Christianity against Islam, and he had to get friends there from the opposite culture, and I think that definitely opened up his eyes and allowed him to being able to be a writer more complex and more humane. So for me, that discover there is something different and not necessarily bad that happens to the character of Nicole Kidman, for instance. In the others, it's important. I've been discovering things myself. I remember when I watched a series called Veneno in Spain. Is about transgender people. And myself, being gay, and having had trans in my house for many years, I realized that I never had seen them in an equal way. For me, I was kind of somehow was kind of diminishing them, because I was used to watch them in parties and having fun, and then when I watched that series, I realized that this is a reality, and that these people want to be as I wanted to be as a gay, being part of our society. They just want to be one normal person, but different, but normal at the same time. So opening up, I mean, it surprised me, because at that time I realized that, of course, I can be surprised, and I hope I can get even more surprised and learn more till the day I die.
Thank you. I think we may have time for some questions from the audience, maybe. Don't be shy. Yeah. Mic is coming.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, for instance, for the movie Cervantes, could you explain where do you get the spark to think, I'm going to do a movie about this, and how does it evolve till it becomes the movie? If you could explain that in detail, it would be very interesting.
Yes, it's one of those projects that I've been working for years. It started maybe 6-7 years ago. My producer said to me, why don't you make a movie about Cervantes? And Cervantes is one of those figures that everybody knows about in Spain and everybody knows nothing about. And so I started to do research, which is also one of the greatest moments of making pictures, that means that you have to learn things. I focus only on the captivity. The movie is called El Cautivo, The Captive, because he was, as I said, he was taken as a prisoner for 5 years in a prison in Algeria. And I found this story fascinating. Not only what happened to him, he tried to escape from prison 4 times, and he couldn't. Those 4 times, but he managed to survive and not to be tortured, not to be mutilated, which was the common thing when you try to escape and they got you. They cut off your ear, or your nose, or your tongue, or a hand. By the way, he had both hands. That's one of the things that many people, particularly in Spain, he was called El Manco de Lepanto. So everybody thinks that he lost his hand in the Battle of Lepanto, but actually he kept his hand. The only thing is that he couldn't move it. And it's a movie for me about, definitely the movie about freedom. Many of my movies talk about freedom, but in this case it's physical freedom, intellectual freedom, because what happened is that in that experience, traumatic experience, which could be compared to being in a camp prisoner in the 20th century, he developed his stories. He started to run away by using his imagination.
Someone else? Yeah.
I would like to ask 3 questions in one. The first one would be, I wanted always to ask you that I have the opportunity to have you in front of, if you open your eyes, en Abre los Ojos, do you have, now that he passed away, something related to Lynch, David Lynch world in that movie? Because there are so many things, and Elephant Man, there are so many, so many things, so many elements that push us to you, to David Lynch. The second one is that I wanted to think that there's a word in your work that's got a double sense. That would be courage. Courage in the sense that you've been dealing with very complicated subjects, and considering our Spanish industry, I think you deserve to be recognized that you make many risky business with many risky movies, and at the same time, this courage is in the personages you reflect, because all of them, for any reason, they have a very strong struggle, whatever is freedom, for whatever is limitation. It has to be something with your creation. Is that you create this because you are fighting all your life against something? Is it personal or just as a way of working?
Answering the first one, actually, David Lynch, which is a director, of course, that I really like and respect, but I would think I would feel more connected to David Lean, you know, the English one, and Steven Spielberg. I mean, David Lynch movies play with the unknown and with the mystery and with not quite explained things. He even sometimes plays with the surrealism. In my case, I'm not a cryptical filmmaker. I really want you to understand about him as and her. So I really try to reach everyone and make sure that it's properly understood. Of course, there are different ways to understand a character, understand a story, but the main message for me has to be clear, and of course in terms of plot. So let's say that sometimes I try quite tricky things, like as I said in Agora, where I was trying to explain the astronomical aspects and also the historical ones, but I try to make it really, really understood by everyone. So I think that for me is the difference in a filmmaker like David Lynch or I. And regarding the struggle, well, I consider myself a strong person, not physically strong, and as I said, I was very easily scared boy, but I had to overcome that, and I think definitely movies helped me to overcome that. Maybe that fear that Josh installed in me by making horror movies has been a way to overcome that. And also the idea of someone having to make up his mind. That happened in my movie Mientras dura la guerra, While at War, which was about Miguel de Unamuno, a Spanish writer, who at the beginning of our civil war, he did, I think, something very brave. And me as a public person in Spain, that made me think, what would I have done? Would have done the same, would have stood up and say what he had to say. So it's something that I keep questioning myself. Am I willing? And what am I willing to do in order, for instance, to stop this injustice or that one? It doesn't mean that I want to see myself as a hero, but sometimes it's true that you have the dilemma, and when you work with Harvey Weinstein, at some point you have to you have to decide if you are willing to stand up and to fight for what you believe in.
The question, yeah.
I heard you saying earlier that you originally envisioned the others for setting to be setting in Chile. So you were born in Santiago. I think your parents left for Spain when you were just a kid. Now that you are in your kind of historical film era, do you think about going back to that story or that part of history?
Well, the thing is that my life has been marked by two historical facts. One was Spanish Civil War, and the other one was the coup d'etat in Chile. So my mom, she ended up in Chile because of our civil war. That is something that I learned about recently. Her sister went to marry a Republican from Barcelona who had to run away after the civil war. So a few years afterwards, my mom, still don't know how, she went there and she ended up being there. So I asked her at some point, Mama, why did you decide, you were so young, why did you decide to stay in Chile instead of staying in Spain, where my grandparents had a pretty normal life? And she said, no, what I found in Chile was more advanced than what I was experiencing in Franco's regime in Spain. So she stayed in Chile for more than 20 years. Then she met my father, and they formed their family. And when I was a year and a half, all the political events, all the situation reminded my mom of what happened in Spain in 1936. So she convinced my father to go back to Spain. So my life has been marked by those two elements. I ended up there and finally ended up at the starting point in Madrid. And yes, I thought about, but the truth is that I've been raised in Spain. So actually, when I started to think about the possibility of making a political movie about what happened in Chile with Salvador Allende and the coup d'etat, the assault to the Palacio de la Moneda, which is also somehow some kind of act violent against the democracy, I ended up doing while at work, which makes more sense because that has to do with my reality nowadays.
As you mentioned before, Nicole Kidman was a part of the process of the scene where she sings to her husband. Does that happen more often, that actors get involved in the creative process?
I'm not sure I quite understood. Sorry.
So with Nicole Kidman.
Yes.
Does that happen more often, that actors get involved?
Yes. That's something that not only actresses or actors, but people from the crew. I really encourage everyone, literally everyone, to be part of the process because it's good for the movie at the end of the day. When I started my first film, as I said, I was 22 when I was shooting it, and I was very worried that people wouldn't pay attention to this youngster who was telling them what to do. So I wanted to make sure that I was in control of everything, But then, with time, of course, you have learned to relax, to trust people. And if you have talented people around, what I really need is getting good ideas. So sometimes the task of a director is being able to grasp, not only to discard bad ideas, but to grasp the good ones. It sometimes can come from anyone, literally anyone. Sometimes in my shootings, someone from the crew, a technical, had come to tell me something that really has helped me to solve the situation. So that's how I see myself, being able to encourage people. Of course, you have to be in command. You have to know what you want to do, but be open to what could happen at the set. And the actors and actresses have a lot to say about that. There was the guy who played the lead in Mientras dura la guerra, Carra Lejalde, who is literally nuts. He's the nicest, crazy guy I've ever met, but he keeps telling you things, And so he says, at some point, one of them, you'll pick it up. And that's true. And I think there was an image, I don't know if you've seen it, when this guy stands up and says his speech. All the people stand and start insulting him. And so he said, why don't you have a shot of the glasses with a reflection of... And I thought that was very Spielbergian. And I said, why not? So...
We didn't have time to discuss about regression, but Emma Watson, she plays a very tricky character in the film, and she was playing against her image in Harry Potter. What kind of input did she have on the character?
Well, I remember when scene in which he was crying, and I said, why? I mean, I still cannot understand how you performers, actors manage to cry scene after scene, because Nicole is very, very temperamental, and when she had one of those moments in which she had to cry and be overwhelmed by the situation, that day she wasn't in the mood. I knew that she dragged you to her nightmare. But for instance, Emma Watson, she just cried and asked for a tissue, and I asked her, how do you manage to do that? And she said, well, when I don't cry, I get so frustrated that I cry.
Someone else?
Hello, I'm from India, and I'm just wondering, do you know there is a very glamorized and romantic version of the sea inside an Indian film? Do you know about that?
Yeah, there was I was told. I haven't seen it, but I was told there was a remake. Yeah.
It's very beautiful and touching, but of course nothing like your film. I do have another question. So, in some of your previous films, you have played non-linear storytelling.
Sorry, with?
Non-linear
storytelling. Oh, yes.
And we have seen this in the works of course, David Lynch and Christopher Nolan, and I don't know who did Arrival. So, do you think this kind of storytelling could be of interest to you in the future, or is it like a fashion that comes and goes? Is it like that?
I have to say, I'm a linear storyteller. Even if I did Open Your Eyes, which is jumping in time all the time, and that was Mateo's influence in the script, because we realized that in order to have it organic, the whole story, we had to jump in time. And actually, my main concern when we wrote that movie was, is the audience finally going to get the whole thing? Because it's jumping all the time. But my style is going, as my life, moving onwards. Forwards. But it's true, for instance, in the story that I want to write, to start writing now, me and my co-writer are realizing that we need to go to flashbacks, go back and again. And for me, I'm a lazy spectator for that, I have to say. I know, even if I'm going to do it right now, because I really think it helps the movie. Every time I can avoid it, I would do it. I would try to go in a linear way.
So in the beginning we saw a very impressive scene where the man was close the window and he jumps out and then he starts flying and we see the woman's leg. You said this was one of your dreams, and I wanted to ask if the way you filmed it recreated your dream the exact same way, or if it was a bit different.
I think that the dream world is something that you have to be open about. I'm not sure if it was exactly the same dream. I don't think I would be hearing that piece of opera in my dream as it is in the movie. But yes, I think I have to say that I found some, not very rare, but I found it a couple of times, nice ideas in my dreams, being obsessed with something, a part of the plot that you cannot solve, and I found the solution in the dream. So maybe if it's something that we creators should explore more. What I know for sure is that when you write, you have to play with your irrational side, which in my case is weird because I consider myself a very rational person, but I have to be open up to the irrational. And of course, dreams are the most irrational thing.
I think we finish. Thank you very much for your question. Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you very much.
If you want to say Alejandro again, he will be saying a few words before the screening of The Others tonight at 8:30. If you haven't watched the film, or if you want to watch the film again and be scared again, who has seen The Others? Who hasn't seen The Others? Okay. Oh, okay. So
it's good that we didn't tell anything about the ending.
Yeah. There's no twist in the film. Thank you.